15 years after writing Dune, Frank Herbert created a new world, this time with his friend, the poet Bill Ransom. Here, instead of sand, there were oceans. This perilous and beautiful planet they named Pandora. In the seas of Pandora lives the ancient, vast, sentient kelp, a bioluminescent, worldwide consciousness that connects all its strands, and it calls itself Avata. Here on Pandora, a ship of humans must survive, and to do that they have to learn the ways of Avata. Hi, I'm Rose, and today on Rose Colored Movies, I'm talking about the Avatar movies. Even from a cursory look at Frank Herbert and Bill Ransom's Pandora books, it's obvious that the Avatar movies were adapted from them. This isn't subtle. No, Avatar's adaptation is so basic, so obvious, I didn't even discover the similarity between the Pandora books and the Avatar movies myself. I found it while reading reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. This is closer to the consensus opinion, which I just happened to stumble on when I was looking up the old Frank Herbert novel, Project Void Ship. The Pandora books were sequels to that book, which I read ages ago. So today I'm going to talk about these books and why people think James Cameron turned them into the universe of Avatar. I'm going to cover all 3 Pandora books, but for the sake of time I'm going to condense it a bit. These books are somewhat long and detailed, and they have lots of interesting characters, but covering them in full would take too long. Spoiler warning, if you want to read these books, I suggest you leave off here. Okay, let's go to Frank Herbert and Bill Ransom's world of Pandora. The first book covers the settlement of humans on Pandora, and their attempt to establish a colony on the surface. The planet of Pandora is unforgiving. It is 90% ocean, and the few bits of land are covered with fast and lethal creatures. We're told that the first few settlements have already failed, and that they've begun a new one. Any breach of their base brings an immediate swarm of deadly creatures. Additionally, the humans struggle under their cruel and tyrannical leader, Morgan Oakes. Oakes dominates others by manipulation and cruelty, and he started a program of breeding clones on the surface, growing them quickly to adulthood and incorporating genes from the kelp. He also seeks to eradicate the kelp, which he sees as a menace. To these tasks he appoints genetic engineer Jesus Lewis. Their ship, in orbit above the planet, has brought the humans to Pandora after attaining consciousness and then godhood. It leaves the humans on Pandora as a final test of their humanity, saying that it will destroy them all if they can't figure out how to worship. Ship appoints a few people as ambassadors to its own wishes. The first is Raja Flattery, one of the original crew members who brought the ship to consciousness. He is taken out of hibernation to goad the humans into worship. There's also the poet Caro Peniel, who is brought down to the surface to speak to the kelp. There is also Caro's sometimes girlfriend, Hallie Eckel, a medtech who is taken up by Ship as a new pupil of its religion. Caro and Raja go to the surface, with Raja taking on the name Raja Thomas to hide his identity as Flattery. Oakes wishes to dispose of both of them, so he sabotages their submarine mission to the kelp to blow up in the water. Raja guesses at the sabotage and disables the explosives, but their sub is disabled, and they're abandoned in a stand of kelp. To their rescue comes a group of Hylighters, tremendous orange balloons of hydrogen that sail the skies of Pandora, dragging long tentacles beneath their enormous bodies. These are the lighter-than-air children of the kelp. These gigantic spore-carrying balloons lift into Pandora's skies, trailing tentacles that pick up rocks for ballast. The Hylighters reach out to talk to them. Here, the trio learns that the kelp is not deadly, as they were told, but can communicate with them by touch. It can speak to them in their minds, and is a vast, ancient consciousness. The Hylighters bring Caro Peniel and the kelp expert Wela Taulini together, and it creates a child with them, a child born of kelp and man. Their stranded submarine is picked up by the Hylighters and taken to land, where Oakes has effectively declared war on the clones. Raja now speaks to the Hylighters through the touch of their tentacles, and with them he leads the defense of the clones. While he is connected to the Hylighter, the lethal creatures of Pandora don't attack them. He and the clones attack the Director's soldiers, and their outpost is destroyed. The clones have now won the planet. The strange child of the kelp and the humans is born mere weeks after its creation, and they call the child Vata. Seeing that the humans have found their purpose on the planet and learned to speak to the kelp, Ship leaves, taking Morgan Oakes with it. The second book of the series picks up hundreds of years later. Oakes' plan to kill the kelp has worked to devastating effect. With the loss of the kelp beds, the planet's ferocious tides have submerged the entire planet. The humans are forced to move to either merman cities on the ocean floor, or to huge floating islands that they grow from organic matter. The mermen are more human-looking, but have webbing between their hands and toes, and are fabulous swimmers. The islands are crowded cities of mostly mutants who have stronger mutations. The child Vata lives on an island hundreds of years later as a strange being in a vat of nutrients. The mermen view the island population as a bunch of dirty mutants on stinking crowded islands. The islands drift on the vast, planetary ocean, trying to avoid grounding their enormous floating cities. The mermen have spent generations replanting the kelp to re-establish the kelp beds. Their hope is to get the land masses to re-emerge from beneath the seas, and then to retrieve the pods that ship has left in orbit. These pods are arcs of hibernating earth animals and plants that are meant to be brought down to Pandora to terraform the planet. We see most of this through two protagonists, Scooty Wang, daughter of a prominent merman family, and Brett Norton, child of an islander. They meet when Brett is swept off an island by a huge wave wall, and Scooty rescues him underwater. The mermen have both dive tanks and a gilled airfish that they can attach to their neck that provides oxygen to them while they swim. Scooty takes Brett back to her home in the merman city, and the two begin to fall in love. A splinter group has emerged in the mermen who seek to destroy the islands and their mutant inhabitants. They're led by their handsome and charismatic leader, Galar Gallo. They have already managed to sink the smallest island, Guimes, by coming up from underneath it with cutters and plasma torches. This kills most of the population of the island, nearly 10,000 people. The pilot of the sub, Izbushka, had been forced into piloting it at gunpoint. Afterwards he managed to escape, but struggles with horrific guilt. Gallo's group takes Scooty and Brett prisoner, but the kids escape through surface tunnels in the city and make their way to the launch bay, where they steal a foil and go out to attempt to warn the other islands. Out in the boat, they run into Queets Twisp, Brett's islander friend who had gone out to search for Brett after the storm. Queets is a long-armed mutant fisherman from the island of Vashon, and had been Brett's employer and mentor. With Twisp is Bushka the pilot, who Twisp had found at sea and rescued. They load his boat onto the foil and go to confront Gallo. Meanwhile, members of Gallo's group attempt to sink the larger island of Vashon, but the kelp, controlled by Vata, destroys their sub and everyone inside. The terrorists and Gallo attempt to take over the base near where the hibernation tanks are set to splash down, but instead he and his group are all killed by the kelp, as the kelp has again become sentient. The Hylighters fly again for the first time in centuries, and land is seen emerging from beneath the waves. Scooty and Brett speak to the kelp, and they find that the kelp retains the memories of the dead who were given to it. Through the kelp they can speak again to their dead. The hibernation tanks splash down into the seas and open up, and whales emerge into the oceans of Pandora, along with many other life forms from Earth. Vata is taken by the kelp from the island, and she joins with the kelp as it flowers once again into the consciousness of Avata. Book 3 jumps 25 years into the future, where one of the humans who emerged from the hibernation tanks, another clone of Raja Flattery, has taken over Pandora as a brutal and ruthless dictator who controls the population through food supply. Those found trying to get around his controls are shot, and their bodies displayed as lessons. Flattery has cut the kelp back to pre-sentience, and the humans have learned how to force it to follow their commands. From a station in orbit, they command the kelp ways, making clear channels where they can transport goods and people. Ferocious earthquakes have broken most of the merman cities, and many of the islands have come to rest on the newly emerged continents. The people under Flattery starve while he rushes the creation of a new void ship above the planet. In just 25 years, he has taken command of the planet and its population to build and provision a new starship. He is in a tremendous hurry as he thinks the earthquakes will destroy Pandora's crust, and wants to leave before the surface blows up. Despite his efforts, the kelp has grown back to sentience, but has learned to hide its emerging intelligence. Instead, it listens and follows the humans, suffering their commands to keep the kelpways open, but building to the day where it shows itself and breaks free of human control. A rebel group, headed in part by Queets Twisp, works in secret from monasteries in the hills. There they maintain a cover of simplicity to hide their work rebuilding human settlement deep in the north of the continent where Flattery can't reach. There they use both merman engineering and islander organics to survive. Things come to a head, and the hungry people of Flattery's city rebel, attacking the director's residence and the power station. Two of the rebels capture the strange human kelp girl, Krista Galley, a pretty white-haired girl who is the emissary of the kelp, who had washed ashore 5 years earlier. She had been taken by the director and kept in isolation, with the director telling everyone that touching her would be fatal. He fills her with neurotoxins so that it looks like touching her really is fatal. Her saviors, a rebel reporter and a cameraman, know that she is the key to the Pandorans and their effort to rid themselves of the director, since she is the link to the kelp. They take her from Flattery, but they're chased by two of his goons, one of whom is Flattery's own illegitimate son, Spider Nevi. Once Krista gets back to the kelp, she is transported to safety by a huge Hylighter, and when she joins with the kelp knows that it's time to break free. All the kelp around the world light up in a blinding display and project images of Krista to the people of Pandora, who see her as a goddess. The Hylighters chase the director into the sea, where his ship is broken and he is taken by the kelp and incorporated into its strands. The people of Pandora are now free to live in symbiosis with Avata. By now, if you've seen any of the Avatar movies, you're probably surprised by the similarities. It's kind of hard to ignore. By the 100th time you read the word Avata, you get it. You see it. It's right there. You don't need to have the planet be named Pandora, but it is. And it just goes on from there. So here's what I think happened. I think James Cameron loved the Pandora books. I think they were his Dune. That his love of the sea and diving made these books with merman cities and a planetary ocean full of sentient kelp just the best thing ever. He wanted to adapt these books, but maybe he couldn't get the rights. So he fudged it. He just stole the whole thing and changed the name slightly to be a bit less plagiaristic, and then added a whole lot of tribal natives. He also condensed the whole story down into 20 years, mashing everything from the hundreds of years in the books into a very condensed timeline. There is a single dude who's at the center of everything now, where before there were several protagonists. And his kids take up a couple of the roles from the book. They come up with a very hokey fix to bring in the clone of Flattery in the form of Quaritch. And then the world of Pandora is just Pandora. It's lethal to humans and has a transcendent glowing kelp that they renamed Eywa. The Avatar movies seem to break down along the book lines. Avatar is book 1, Way of Water is book 2. I do wonder what they'll do for the later Avatar movies, but my guess is that they'll split the books in half. Avatar 3 will cover the last half of book 2, and the two proposed future movies would then cover book 3. I'm doing this video before seeing Fire and Ash, so I'm making some guesses from watching the trailers. But the trailers do show the Hylighters, so I feel like I'm on the right track, and that the films will progress roughly in sequence with the books. The first Avatar movie takes the premise of the book, but gets rid of ship and most of the genetic engineering. In the place of clones, the Pandorans are the native race of very tall, primitive blue people. Though, if you think about it, they really do look quite human. But here, humans are humans, and Pandorans are Pandorans. Jake Sully is Carol Peniel, sent in to communicate with the natives, but ultimately ends up taking the side of the native life against the commander. Quite a lot of the plot of the first Avatar movie can be traced to the film Dances with Wolves, or even to Fern Gully. The connection to Frank Herbert got me thinking that it has a lot of Dune in it. They're all stories of an outsider who takes up the garment of the native, joins the tribe, has a romance with a girl from the tribe, rides a cool beast, and ends up leading the tribe against the people he had originally been part of. For all its glory, Dune is still a bit of a power fantasy for the invader. The white man is exceptional, even when he's transplanted into a new group. The Pandora books are a little more critical of mankind than Dune. In the Pandora sequence, those in power are almost all corrupt, and their only overriding goal is to kill or control anything that challenges their power. Nature always wins in the end, and every attempt man makes to dominate nature ends up backfiring on them and leading to their destruction. In place of Avata, Cameron brings in the giant interconnected plant Eywa, which has both trees and underwater kelp trees. Underwater trees. They never explain how it lives as both tree and kelp thing. I will say, in the Avatar movies, Eywa always comes off as a bit cringe, a little weak as a world spirit glowy thing, where Avata had a personality and a voice. Avata is really the main character of the Pandora books, the world-dominating intelligence that keeps getting cut back only to re-emerge. Avata thinks and speaks and is interesting. In Cameron's movie, the Pandorans have to connect by link-ups, where Avata does it by touch. But it amounts to the same thing. Jake rides the bird monster by linking up with it, like Kiri rides with the Hylighter. The movie ends with Jake fighting with the Pandorans against the humans, and they go to war, destroying the human compound and pushing them off the planet, just like Kiri and the Hylighters at the end of the first book, where the clones fight the humans and destroy the outpost. On to Avatar 2, The Way of Water. Here we join the Mer people, the Pandorans with webbed feet and hands. These mermen are again tribal natives. They do, however, have the airfish that help them breathe underwater. And here the floating islands have mostly disappeared, and the islands of the books have transformed into the Leviathan whales, the Tulkun. We see the humans chase down and brutally kill a whale in place of the human terrorists sinking the islander town of Gweems. So the islands are whales now. Quaritch is back because he's playing all the bad guys here. He's Oaks from the first book, Gallo from the second book, and will probably be Flattery from the third book. His kid is appropriately named Spider, and he will likely become a main character later and a henchman for Quaritch in the later movies. Quaritch is a clone because Flattery was a clone, and boy did they make this point clunky in the movie. Somehow in the second movie he had a memory backup that they could load into a new Pandoran body. But fine, whatever, he's standing in for all the power-hungry madmen. Just like Gallo commandeered a sub to sink Gweems, Blue Quaritch commandeers a whaling ship and its crew. The reluctant whaler is standing in for Izbushka, who was forced to pilot the sub into Gweems, and had to deal with his guilt in the aftermath. I think Queet's Twisp got turned into the whale Pyakon, the one who rescues and befriends Jake's kid. Loak connects with the whale and talks to him. This kid Loak is here as Brett Norton. Standing in for Scooty Wang, then, is his love interest, the mermaid, girl. If Pyakon is Twisp, those whales are going to be all over the place in the next few movies. The regrown kelp is willing to kill humans now to defend itself and destroys a submarine when it tries to take down the island city of Vashon. This scene is replicated exactly in The Way of Water when Kiri grabs some kelp and commands it to squish a submarine. So let's talk about Kiri, child of xenobiologist Grace Augustine and the kelp. I mean, we don't know that yet, but she is 100% a hybrid between the kelp and the doctor. Kiri is Vata here, the hybrid child of the kelp and the scientist Wela Taulini. Blue Quaritch kidnaps Jake's kids, just like Gallo attempts to kidnap Scooty and Brett. In the movie, this becomes a whole big thing with the ship blowing up like the Titanic around them, where in the books the kids just escape through a service tunnel. One of Jake's kids dies in the battle because he wasn't a character in the books and was therefore expendable. The dead here are given to Eywa, just like they're given to Avata, and they live on through Eywa/Avata in the same way. Getting to the end of Way of Water, we're still only partway through the second book. After the kids escape, they meet up with Queet's Twisp and the guilty pilot Bushka. There's a final confrontation at the landing site for the terraforming plants and animals from the hibernation tanks. And the Hylighters haven't shown up yet, as they do at the climax of the second book. I suspect Fire and Ash will cover these plot elements, likely ending with a big finish where the world itself attempts to kill the bad guys. I don't think we'll see anything from Book 3, with Quaritch the dictator, Kiri or whoever as the holy representative of Eywa, and Spider as Quaritch's conflicted henchman. Personally, one of my favorite things about reading the Pandora books is that it explains so many of the weird situations in the movies. The Avatar films are full of these strange setups that don't make a ton of sense in the perspective of the film, but when you read the books, you can see where these ideas came from, and they make marginally more sense. So Quaritch has a clone. Yeah, of course, he's Flattery. A whale dies and the mermen go mad with grief. Well, it makes more sense when it's a city of 10,000, but sure, okay. So if you thought that the Avatar movies looked cool but had weird plots, the books explain where some of these elements came from. You can also see broadly where the story is headed. To those who complain that Avatar's story and characters are weak or predictable, I say, that's the point. These characters and setups were designed to be as big and obvious as possible. The Pandora books had complex characters and motivations. The people generally acted like people. They were designed in part by Frank Herbert, whose Dune books also had interesting, complex characters. The Pandora books are similar. Caro Peniel, Scooty Wang, Queet's Twisp, these guys are sublime. But sublime is too complicated for the average person. Avatar dumbed all of this way, way down. The characters in Avatar are big and overblown because they need to be comprehensible to the average person. The average person doesn't read Dune. The average person doesn't read anything. For these normal people, Cameron decided to create simplified avatars of personality. Good guy, bad guy. They are bland and flawless, and that is the point. I almost think they're designed to be forgettable. I barely know their names. Jake's kids might as well be Kid 1, Kid 2, and Kid 3. Everyone loves James Cameron's movies for their visual splendor. Cameron is one of the few filmmakers who understands spectacle. His movies are like going to the circus. They're huge and colorful and full of technical wizardry, and are tremendously fun for a short while. But they're also very, very shallow, because nobody expects profundity from the circus. Side notes. To the issue of how Cameron is using these books without acknowledging credit, I don't know. I hope he gave the Herberts and Bill Ransom a bag of money, but I doubt it. I suspect they're just banking on the idea that they can afford the lawsuit, which doesn't seem forthcoming anyhow. These movies are the most extreme, obvious forgery I've ever seen, but they're also huge moneymakers, which I think justifies just about everything. Remember, there is no wrongdoing that can't be justified by profit. I should mention, Herbert died while he and Ransom were working on the third book, so as far as I can tell from the introductions, Bill Ransom wrote a lot of the third book himself, and possibly much of the second book as well. Publishers were very much against Frank Herbert sharing billing with his unknown friend and fought it bitterly, but Herbert insisted. Personally, I think Ransom made Frank Herbert's stuff better. While these books aren't Dune, even Dune wasn't really Dune by the later books. By Children of Dune, the pacing had started to drag and it got boring. It's hard to say who did what in their pairing, but Ransom sure seems to have ironed out some of Herbert's quirks. The Pandora books weren't simple. They were emotionally complex, complicated stories. They're really long, too, but they have the kind of huge-scale world-building I love in sci-fi. I wouldn't recommend the books unless you're a sci-fi nerd who can handle the hard stuff, or you're a fan of Avatar who wants to see where it all got started, and where it's all going. But they're really interesting books. So if you do go to see the new Avatar movie, I hope it's good, and that you enjoyed it. If you did, spare a thought for Frank Herbert and Bill Ransom, who I believe created the fabulous world of Pandora. While I was reading these books, I kept thinking of the series Scavenger's Reign. In the show, a ship crash lands on an alien planet, and the few survivors try to live on this planet where almost everything is trying to kill them. It's gorgeous and fabulous, and I don't think I've ever been so scared of an alien world. I don't think the trailers for the show really did it justice, for the weirdness and the scope of the show's creativity. Scavenger's Reign is one of the best sci-fi series I've seen in a long time, and I can't help wondering if the creators read these books at some point. There are a few echoes of the themes in the Pandora books. At any rate, the show is a lot of fun, and it's worth a watch. Alright, that's it for me today. Thanks for listening. This is Rose with Rose-Colored Movies.